some of you may have had a chance to give us a quick glance in advance. This piece that I wrote. This is in the Huffington Post. In Twilight Eclipse, I'll vote for Team Bella, where I'm trying to kind of turn conventional wisdom on its head by kind of getting away from the Team Edward versus Team Jacob kind of dichotomy and debate that I felt was permeating our popular culture last summer in particular. And so what I want to do is just ask people, and I'm going to come back and answer that question, Kendra, and I want to hear from you all, what do you see as the news hooks that I'm using here?
Twilight.
Twilight, right. Go back. Go ahead, sorry. I think my voice is echoing.
I guess also just maybe also like describing the atmosphere, how like everywhere you go you see Twilight posters, Twilight Barbie dolls, Twilight everything.
Right. So I use those. I'm not sure if that person needs to unmute there. Getting an echo. Okay. Sorry. It may be that some of you are in the same office and that was getting like a weird loop of my voice. Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, I used the Twilight movie in popular culture as the news hook. And I was careful, even though I hadn't seen the new movie, what I wanted to do was, if I'd actually talked about the new movie 3 weeks afterwards, it wouldn't be timely anymore. So what I essentially use as a news hook is tonight's midnight premiere, right? So the third movie's coming out. I haven't seen it yet. I've since watched it. But that I'm using that as a news hook as like, okay, people are interested, there's all this buzz building. People are getting ready to go see this movie tonight. This seems like the right time to put this up. And then, of course, talking about the other pop culture, I think kind of news hook is just all the different things that I've seen, like the Barbie dolls and that kind of thing. And then I would say, so my lead is this first paragraph. And hopefully, I tried to arrange it in a way that, design it in a way that would grab people's attention, that would kind of bring them into the piece. What are the sources of evidence I use in this piece from what you can see here? You can see some things that are highlighted, some things are hyperlinked.
So Entertainment Weekly and Ms. Magazine.
Other writers.
Other writers. Yep. Other offers. Oh, cool. There's I didn't realize Rachel Simmons is a friend of the community here. That was not planned. I swear. If I scroll down, here's another one. The Family Violence Prevention Fund is another source I use of evidence. Actually, at the very bottom, I actually reference other movies. I talk about Juno. I talk about the movie Whip It briefly as another, I think, source of evidence of using kind of comparing this film to other films. So you're absolutely right. So I think hopefully this, there's sort of a mix of, so I mean that's one of the fun things about blogging, right? And is that you can versus having something in complete print form, where you can, as you all do on your blog, you can hyperlink to other things. So you can hyperlink and actually look at this bar, for the fun of it. Let me show you what these things look like. So here's what the Twilight dolls look like. And so if someone's reading, they can actually go to this, look at this. But then I also have some of the more, I consider kind of the harder sorts of evidence. I have a piece in Salon. I have a piece in Ms. Magazine. Ms. Magazine I consider to be, a reputable place, of journalistic integrity. And then, of course, an organization, the Family Violence Prevention Fund. So I think that, and to kind of go back to Kendra's question, I don't know if there's a particular formula. I feel for me, it's obviously this is a much more of a personal. This is a lot of personal anecdote. This is a lot of me talking from my personal, my personal point of view and my own experience watching the movies and whatnot. But I think that I think what changes this from simply sort of a rant or just sort of an expression of my thoughts. What I think kind of takes it up a notch into more of an opinion-oriented piece and more of an op-ed is actually using these sources of evidence, pulling in. I actually did some research. I actually did pull in some information so I could build a credible argument. And so for me, I just kind of wanted to pepper it in. I wanted to kind of to integrate it into the piece. But I didn't feel like I needed it to be overwhelmingly like an academic kind of piece. So I didn't feel like I needed to have an overwhelming amount of this of these sources of evidence in there. So I think it depends on what the nature of the piece is, perhaps the audience in terms of how you create kind of the flow and the balance. And then the other question is enough to link a source, or do you need to actually use formal citations? And I think for this level, I wouldn't say that you do that. Let me step back and say that I think linking the piece or just referencing the piece is completely sufficient. You do not need to have formal citations. If you think about reading an op-ed in the New York Times, it's just going to say according. You always want to attribute a piece, attribute a source of evidence to the author according to New York Times columnist, Thomas Friedman, blah, 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 or according to this book by this author or whatever it may be. Obviously, when you're doing things online, then you actually can hyperlink to the source, but you don't need to have citations at the end as you would if you're writing a formal paper or a thesis. And let me scroll down to my to be sure paragraph. Did folks see where that is? There's a hint. It actually has the term sure in it. So I have it right here. You actually don't have to use the phrase to be sure. I did use the phrase sure. This is more of a way to kind of ease the reader in. So I have sure the appeal of the movies isn't completely lost on me. The actors are good looking. The gloomy Pacific Northwest landscapes are stunning. And there is a decent indie rock soundtrack. In fact, my friends talk about how good the music is in these movies. And many of us have had those moments of teen angst where we feel pitted against the world. This is where I'm trying to address my critics, because the point of this piece was not to only speak to people who don't like, who are critical of Twilight movies. I wanted to also talk and have a dialogue with Twilight fans. And if you are interested, after the call and looking, I had an interesting range of comments pop up. I had some people blast me because I hadn't read the book, and maybe I could have, I didn't anticipate that comment. What I say is something like, up here I say, after initially resisting the movies, the sheer intensity of permeation of Twilight compelled me to finally rent the DVDs and see what the hype is about. So I felt like that was sort of being, honest about the fact that I hadn't read the book, but maybe actually, in order to address the critics, I could have said, I'll be honest, I haven't read the book. This is purely, my opinion about the movies. That was one. If I were to do it again, that might be one thing I might add to this. But I got blasted. People say, oh, the books, in the books she's more of an independent feminist character and this and that. And then my piece around, where I talk about teen dating violence. In fact, I'll scroll down quickly. I had a very interesting comment from a Start Strong parent and Start Strong Idaho, part of a national initiative funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to promote healthy teen relationships, commented about that component of it. So, I had some people who were blasting me because they disagreed with me, and then I had, this sort of really engaging dialogue about, critical issues around health and safety for teens. So a very interesting, I think, kind of experience when you're able to kind of put something out on the Huffington Post. There's so many different people who are reading it that it's, you get an interesting cross section of pieces of comments.